Good afternoon, everyone. So, we are ready to start our afternoon session. I hope you really enjoyed the morning session on integration of AI in academia. We're continuing that in our afternoon session. And it's my absolute pleasure to introduce our esteemed keynote speaker, Dr. Manfred Philipp. Dr. Philipp is Professor Emeritus at Lehman College and the CUNY Graduate Center, and a distinguished leader in academia and scientific research. Throughout his career, Dr. Philipp has played a pivotal role in shaping CUNY's academic landscape, serving as chair of the University Faculty Senate, an ex officio member of the CUNY Board of Trustees, and president of the CUNY Academy of the Humanities and Sciences. His dedication to faculty governance and student success has had a lasting impact. Beyond CUNY, Dr. Philipp has led national and international activities, including securing federal grants for science programs at Lehman College and spearheading the Erasmus Chemistry Exchange Program. Even in retirement, he continues his mission to support students through the Bell Zeller Scholarship Trust Fund and has served as president of the U.S. Fulbright Association. Currently, Dr. Philipp is the CEO of AI Biodiscoveries, where he's tackling one of the world's most pressing health challenges, antibiotic resistance in bacterial pathogens in the global south. His work bridges the gap between science and societal impact, making his insights invaluable to today's discussion. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Manfred Philipp.
Thank you. When she was saying those words, I said, who is she talking about here? Is that me? No. Before I start, I'd like to ask, say a couple of words. First of all, University Faculty Senate, who here is involved? Just raise your hand and applaud. Yes, let's applaud these people serving the university. Who here is involved in the Professional Staff Congress of CUNY, the labor union? I used to be chapter chair at Lehman College, and so I think it's an important thing to do. Those two organizations really are responsible for funding this university, for advocating in Albany, for making sure that this university gets the money it needs. The administration does what it can, but remember that the administrators are appointed by the Board of Trustees, which in turn is appointed by the governor and mayor predominantly. There is a student and faculty member, and faculty are very important parts of trustee committees and voting members, by the way, of trustee committees. But the advocacy work in Albany is done mainly by the faculty. That means this what it takes to keep these places running. And that's really important for you, your students, the city, and the state. So congratulations to those of you who are doing it, especially also in local faculty governance, the College Senate. For those of you involved there, congratulations. That's the work that faculty need to do, even though it takes away from your important research. It's just the way it is. Right now, as it says on the screen, I'm managing director of the Bell Zeller Scholarship Fund. You may ask, what is that? Well, it's a scholarship fund that gives scholarships to CUNY students, only CUNY students. It's a private fund. In other words, we raise money by doing gala events where people pay to attend. And the last such, and that we take that money and we turn it around and make scholarships out of it. We also have a fund that we collect interest on, and we make scholarships out of those. Should you have your students apply for the Bell Zeller scholarships? Oh no, really? Yes, you should. You should, okay? Now there are some campuses in CUNY, I don't really mention which ones, that never send a single application. Not one. Can you imagine? Free money for your students. Now, there is a requirement. They have to do public service. There's another requirement. They have to be grade A students, 3.75 or above. But then they have to do public service. Work in a hospital, arrange for food deliveries for people who can't buy food, something like that. It can be inside or outside CUNY, and I suggest you apply. Now, it's not in my interest actually to do that because the members of the Bell Zelda Scholarship Board all have to review all these applications, and it's a lot of work, okay? But nonetheless, if you haven't suggested that one of your students apply, do so, please, okay? There are some other things that were mentioned here and some other things that are not mentioned. Fulbright was mentioned. Fulbright, I think you know what that is, but you may not have heard of Gilman. You may not have heard of Boren. These are federal programs that take American students and place them overseas. Fulbright also takes scholars, that is to faculty members, and places them overseas. I was a Fulbrighter in Nepal, and I was a Fulbrighter in Portugal. And I could do it again if I wanted to. There are Fulbright specialist programs where you can go for 2 or 3 weeks. I was there for a semester in each place. Should you do that? Yes, you should. You should apply to these. Boren is, guess what, associated with the American Security Services for foreign language instruction. Fulbright is not associated with the Security Service. At least not as far as I know. And so then there's another organization that you should be aware of that I'm involved in. I'm currently president of the DAAD Alumni Association for the US. Well, what is that? DAAD is another exchange program, German Academic Exchange Service. It's the German version of Fulbright. And they take people, like Fulbright takes American students overseas, overseas students to America. Well, the DAAD does the same thing for Germany. German students overseas, overseas students to Germany. So your students could go there if you ask them to do so. It'll be full support. There are faculty programs too. Should you tell your students to do this? Nah, it's more work for me. No, yes, you should. Please do, okay? I'd love to see more CUNY students involved in these programs, okay? If CUNY is a great place, but if there's one thing that CUNY could do maybe a little better is to tell its students what the possibilities are after graduation or even before graduation. Okay, it's important. Now, so that's what I've been trying to do. Now, there's this company that I'm setting up, but the company is in stealth mode. And why is it in stealth mode? Because our patents are still in application. So I can't really talk about the company itself very much. Maybe a month or so from now. I mentioned Nepal. Yes, it's based in Nepal, in Kathmandu. In Kathmandu, that's where our laboratories are. That's where most of our work is done. In Kathmandu, lots of people die from infectious disease. People coming into the hospital where I used to work as a Fulbrighter, okay, women would come into the hospital to give birth, and they were infected with a lung infection by a bacterium such as Acinetobacter baumannii, which then would kill them. No antibiotic would help. Nothing. Okay? They would just die. Now, does that bacterium exist here? Yeah, it's present on the handrails of the New York City subway. But it doesn't get into people's lungs very often here, if at all. Okay? Someday, guess what? It will. Okay? It's just a matter of time. But it's here. It's just waiting. But in Nepal and in India and other countries in South Asia, it's a big deal. But I can't talk about the company. Not yet. That's unfortunate. So my talk here is a little different than what you'd expect. I'm not going to be talking about meta glasses, which will make your students access the internet without your knowing, or access AI without your knowing. Have you heard about meta glasses? $299, and they have glasses that look like mine, and they give them full access to AI. How about that? Isn't that great? Okay. Okay. Rings that have access to AI that are meant to measure your blood sugar and your blood pressure and stuff like that, but have access to AI on top of it. Isn't that good for your students to have in the classroom or during an oral examination so the glasses can tell them what to say during the oral examination? I think that's great. Isn't it great? I'm glad I'm retired 9 years ago and I don't have to deal with this. That's all I can say. I am retired 9 years ago, okay? As I was telling my table mates, I retired because of the salary increase when you retire, but we can talk about that some other day. There is a salary increase when you retire. If you play your game, that's right. I was asked to tell about the future, but I don't know about the future. I have no idea. but I can deduce maybe what the past was like. So I turned that into a mirror image. So I'm going to give you a talk that has nothing to do with what you thought I would talk about, I hope. So here, this is the first woman that was created by the Greek ancient gods. Okay, Pandora. You've heard of Pandora. Yeah, I know there's a music system called Pandora, but I don't know why. But anyways, Pandora's illustrated here, 460, in this illustration, 460 BC. So Pandora was the first, as I said, the first woman created by the Greek gods, and they gave her a vase, but she said, don't open it. And you've heard the story. The story is pitched as a box, but it was a vase. And she opened it, and all the evil things in the world came out. And the last thing that came out was hope. Okay. Now, why am I telling you this? Because I don't think Pandora was a human being. I think she was a robot, an intelligent robot. That's the way I interpret it. Okay. Because if she was created just like that, then it's, of course, a robotic. Now, there are other creatures in ancient Greece, Talos. Now, Talos was made out of bronze, and he was alive. Okay. And so he was alive, and he was indestructible except for a little thing on his ankle, which allowed the enemies to get rid of him. And so here is Talos being destroyed. Now, Talos was a robot, an intelligent robot. Okay. And so Talos, if you got at his ankle, which is being done here, then Talos was destroyed. Okay. Now, did these things really exist? Well, I'm not going to comment on that, but I just want to say that, and this is, of course, in Italy, the vase comes from Italy. Talos, the name was then adopted by the US Army for its armored robotic device that would help military soldiers work. So they knew about the story about Talos. Did this really exist? Of course not, maybe not. Now, the ancient world didn't limit itself to making artificial human beings out of bronze. They also did this for horses. Here in the Etruscans were a civilization that lived near Rome in Italy at the time. Here is an artificial horse being fabricated by the ancients. And here is Athena making this is only a clay model of a horse. Notice she hasn't finished the leg yet. But the idea of artificial horses being robotic horses was generally available in the ancient world. So then there were also things like flying chairs. Were these intelligent chairs? Of course, all you had to do was tell them where to go. There was no control. So they were intelligent, AI-powered flying chairs. Back near around 500 BC. Just imagine. Okay, we didn't know that. This is, by the way, I put a map of where this object was found. And then there's an object that they had in the ancient world flying over the seas. It was an airplane with wings. You just told it where to go. It's like these cars they have in Phoenix, Arizona. You just tell them where they go and it goes there. With this, they had this, 500 BC, and it was even flew. We haven't gotten there yet. Okay. So why am I just telling you these stories? Well, I think the past can help, but not determine how the future will go. The people in the past were not different than us, after all. They were the same kinds of people with the same thoughts and desires and stories. And I apologize that my stories only come from the Greek world because they're the most well documented. I wish it were come from South Asia, Nepal, or Africa, or anywhere else, but that's where it happens to be best documented in my case. Here is wings that were manufactured for Daedalus. Daedalus making for Icarus, the person who was able to fly. Well, these are obviously artificial intelligence controlled things. That's all I can say. Okay. Nor the bronze statue that was being manufactured. Clearly, it was going to be alive. In the Middle Ages, they had different kinds of creatures. This is the Temptation of Saint Anthony with various interesting creatures. Now, were they robotic? I don't know, but they weren't natural. And Michelangelo did the same picture, only in color. Okay, if you look at it in detail, it's exactly the same. But here are these creatures tormenting a person. Are they robots? I don't think so, but maybe they were. I'm just putting that out as a speculation. Okay, another foundry scene making a worker, and then much more recently, there was an automaton, a robot basically made out of metal that was used in battle in a story, The Fairy Queen in 1596. So I'm saying these ideas and these thoughts are not new. Now I started this off by Pandora being manufactured by the gods for a particular purpose, and here is Prometheus manufacturing a human being, okay, bone by bone. Um, that now these are these humans or are they really robots? I don't know. I think they're both. Now we have, and much more recently, we have things that look like robots that move around. Musical clocks here in New York City, the Delacorte musical clock are objects that go around and talk, and they're even households have these cuckoo clocks with objects and things, robots going in and outside the building. Here's one in Poland. You see the figures going around in Sicily, the figures going. This is universal, almost in Western civilization at least, that we create robots to do things that dance in front of us, puppets, so to speak. Okay? So it's not new that we're going to do this kind of thing. Now, here, much more recently, is a scene from a movie film in 1927, Metropolis, featuring the machine human. Okay? Notice that actually inside there was a real human being inside. They didn't have the ability to make it totally, but this is an actual person hiding inside the machine woman. Um, and this was a silent movie. They didn't have sound at the time. They had to play pianos where the movie was going on. Have you heard of Metropolis? No, I guess not. So it's okay. But in any case, here we are. Now, this is where I was asked to talk about the future. My question is, in the future, when will people first be exposed to AI in the course of their lifetime? And I have that answer here in this slide. These are talking dolls. They're talking dolls. They talk by themselves. Now, when do children get exposed to these talking dolls? Well, maybe when they're 6 months old. Is that true? When do dolls are given to children? Maybe 6 months, maybe a year. So in the future, I was asked to predict the future. In the future, the dolls will have AI. If my glasses can have AI built into them, well, the dolls can have AI built into them too. So that's my prediction. People will give their children, their babies, a doll, and the doll will speak to them. They already have speaking dolls, right? Right there. These are for sale. Here at 1286, talking baby dolls. Isn't that great? Isn't that a wonderful future? I think it's wonderful. Okay. All right. So that's my prediction. Now, I wanted to say a few other words about AI and its antecedents in the computer world. And so here's one. This is probably the first real computer in 1939. At desktop. Okay. And it was used for, these things were used for cryptography mainly. The first computers were mainly used for cryptography. Here is a British computer from 1941. These were used in World War II for deciphering cryptography. Here's one from 1951. I just illustrated from the size of the machines they did it back then. Here's one from 1943. Large machines used in the Second World War a long time ago. This is 80 years ago, right? 80 years ago. And we go on. Here is another one in Bletchley Park in Britain. 80 some years ago, long time ago. Now, if you go to, have anybody been in Google headquarters in Manhattan? Raise your hand. In the basement of Google headquarters? Guess what's in the basement? Enormous computers. Row after row of computers. They look sort of like this, or like, no, not that, like this, yeah? They look sort of like that, and they're massive, and they run Google. There's several across the planet. Then we got to this. I think everybody knows this one. And things got smaller. We had this was in CUNY. We used to have these inside CUNY. Almost every campus had one of these. People at home had lots of these. I remember what I started in CUNY in 1977. And in 1981 or so, a faculty member in the biology department at Lehman and I split the cost of a machine like this. We couldn't afford it to buy it by ourselves. It was too expensive. Salaries then were not what they are now. And so we split it. And I got the better part of it because I had it at home. And I only gave it to him later on, but he never really demanded it, which made me very happy. So I had it. I had email access at home in around 1981. Email access at home. This is before the internet, before the ARPANET became the internet. So how did we have email access in CUNY in the late 70s and early 80s? In fact, we had it. We were the first. Well, here I have a picture of the first computer with a graphical user interface, blah, 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 the Macintosh, Linux. Here is some CUNY history. BitNet, let's start. 1969 was ARPANET. It was a military network. It was the internet. It was the first, changed its name to the internet later on. But CUNY didn't have access to it. Why did CUNY have access to the ARPANET? Because we had no military contracts in CUNY. We weren't a contractor of the Department of Defense. So the people in CUNY, namely Ira Fuchs, made a deal with the Yale University that we would create a network with the Yale University. We'd call it BitNet because it's their network. And it was a competitor to the ARPANET, which we had no access to. Okay. And so this started, in 1981, which is a couple of years after I started CUNY. So we, at Lehman College, we got access to the email system at BitNet almost immediately. We didn't have computers, by the way, on campus. We only had terminals. We were logged into one of those DEC VAX machines on campus, and from there we got email. So the emails were there in the early 1980s in CUNY. We were the first in the country in academia to have internet, have email. Now, so, and I remember this person certainly by name, but now granted in the whole country, the first email was sent 10 years earlier, okay, on ARPANET, on the military network, okay. Now, let me show you another slide. Here is Ira Fuchs again, but here's what BitNet became. It ran across the world. I remember distinctly when BitNet came up to the Iron Curtain, up to where the Soviet Union controlled it. And did we want to cross the Iron Curtain at the time? This was during the Cold War. And obviously it did. And so it was why am I talking about this here? Well, AI would not be possible without communication devices like this. This is fundamental to the development of AI later on. Now, there's another person associated with CUNY who was important in the development of AI through the development of the internet, and that's Robert Kahn. He was an alumnus of City College. He's been honored by all these prizes. Now, what I'm giving you is a challenge. Go back to your campus and initiate the idea that this fellow should be given an honorary degree. He's still alive, as far as I know. Ask your campus to give him an honorary degree from CUNY because he's one of the most important people in the world, as was Ira Fuchs, who I knew, but I didn't know this fellow here because he did his work all at someplace else, not at CUNY. Okay, so these are two CUNY leaders who we should remember. They're still with us, by the way. Okay, so with that, I'm done. Feel free to ask me questions privately or after. I love this meeting, by the way. This is a fantastic meeting. Okay, I hope you enjoyed my talk, but maybe not. We'll see. And if you want to know how I use AI in the biotechnology, well, I'll tell you about that in a month or two when our patents get settled, and we'll tell you more. Okay. All right. Thank you for your attention.